Hello YouTube, I'm Sparsh and I welcome to you this video, and in this video I'm going to talk about functions in Python. Now what is a function? A function is a block of code which only runs when it is called. It is a group of statements that you can use in your program again and again to implement some functionality or implement some methods. Now functions are very useful, like in big projects where you don't want to write the same line of codes again and again. You just define a function for it and you use that function by simply calling it. Now you can pass data known as parameters into a function. You can pass strings and all sort of values, and we will talk about this. Now how to create a function? To create a function you use the keyword def, which is an abbreviation for definition. So to create a function you use def and followed by the function name. So let's define a function by the name print string, and in the body of this function let's just print hello. Now this is just the definition of function. Now we have to call it to print out this hello on our Python console. So for calling a function you use the function name followed by the parentheses. So just type the name of the function print string followed by the parentheses. Now you can save and run it, and you can see we have hello right here. Now let's talk about arguments. Now arguments can be anything. It can be a value, it can be a string, it's just any information that can be passed into functions as arguments. So let's say we want to have an argument here and we want to print our name. So in this function definition, inside the parentheses you define a variable name which is called as argument, and while calling the function inside the parentheses you will provide the value of this name argument. Let's say I'm gonna write my name Sparsh, and then simply just print name here. So you can see it prints our name onto the Python console. Now you can add as many arguments as you wish, but you have to separate them with commas. Like if we want to add an argument here, let's say we add an argument by the name age. Now while calling the function you have to make sure that you provide the same number of arguments that you have defined in the function definition. So like this we have defined two arguments here by the with name and age. So we have provided one argument. Now if we run this program right here, it will show us an error, missing one required potential argument, because we have defined an argument in the function definition but we haven't provided the value for it. So while calling the function you have to provide two arguments. So the first argument, the first value correspond to the first argument of the function. Now for the second argument, let's say we print the value, we pass the value 21. Now even though we do not print the age here, the program will not give us an error because the requirement of the arguments are satisfied here. So it will print out the name right out, and if we want we can print our age too, because now we have the value of this argument, and it's here. Now by default our function must be called with the correct number of arguments, which I've talked about. Now let's talk about the let's create just some few more functions here. Let's create a math related function which adds let's say 2 to any number. Now we provide an argument here, and we just print. Let's not do print. I'm going to tell you how to call a function by another method. So let's just return here number plus 2. So I've created a function here which adds 2 to the given number. Now since the function returns a value, it does not print, so we have to make a variable and call the function through this variable. Now let's create a variable var by the name var, and it should be equals to add to, and then in the parentheses we provide the argument for it. Let's say 6, and it should print us, oh wait, it does not, because we haven't printed our variable which now contains the result of this function. So I save and print it, and we get it here. And now since the function does not print on itself, we cannot just call the function without any variable here, because it will give us an error then. It will not print us anything, sorry, it will not print us anything. We have to provide a variable here which will hold the result of this function, and then we can print it explicitly like this. Now let's talk about the types of argument you can pass into a function. So first comes the arbitrary argument. Now arbitrary argument is used if you do not know how many arguments that will be passed into your function. You just let's say we make a function by the name function, and say we want to print games, the name of games. Now if you do not know the number of arguments, if you do not know how many games you will pass in the function, you just add a asterisk before the parameter name while defining the function. So in the definition, let's say we print statement like my favorite game is and let's do this later. First we call it, and since we do not know, let's give it a number of games. So while calling the function, in the parentheses we give, let's say, a number of games which we want to pass it in the arguments of the function. Let's do one more. It should be football. Now while printing the statement here, we can use the indices. We can use any indices. It should be 0, the hockey will be 1, and the football will be 2nd. So let's print game 2, print it, and you can see the football is printed here. This way the function will receive a tuple of arguments and can access the items accordingly. If we want, we can print any game here. It's gonna do accordingly. Now the next type of arguments is keyword argument. Now keywords argument, you can send arguments with the key value syntax. They will be key, and corresponding to that key there will be a value. This way the order of the argument does not matter. Like the order here, like we created the first name and then age. If we do age and name, this will not matter in keyword arguments. So let's define a new function here. Let's say function 1, because we have already created the function, and let's do fruits name. So actually just we'll do this later. First let's call this function and give it a set of arguments. Inside this parentheses, let's say fruit 1 is equals to apple, fruit 2 equals to banana, and fruit 3 is equals to Now since these are string, these must be included in inverted commas. Now we have given a number of arguments here inside which we want to pass into the function. So we will set these three arguments which we want to pass into the function by their names. Fruit3, and just let's print the same old my favorite fruit is, let's say fruit3. Functions is not defined. Where did we use functions? We have to do the same name as we have written in the function definition. So my favorite food is mango. Now the thing which I have said earlier, the order of the argument does not matter. So if we in the function definition, if we do fruit3 first, and let's do fruit2 on the second position and fruit1 on the third position, it will still run the program. Now the third type of argument is arbitrary keyword argument. Now if you do not know how many keyword arguments that will be passed into your function, you just add two asterisk sign before the parameter name in the function definition. Now this way the function will receive a dictionary of argument and can access the items accordingly. Now dictionary, I have talked about this before in my previous videos. Dictionary is a type of data type in Python which runs on the basis of key value pair. So there will be a key, and corresponding to that key there will be one or more than one values. Now let's just define a function for it. Function2, and you have to use two asterisks before the name of the parameter. And we're doing languages here. So while calling the function, let's give it a random set of some languages. So let's do language 1 equals to, let's say, Java, because why not. Language 2 equal to it should be equal to Python, and language 3 should be equals to C. Now we have passed three arguments while calling the function, and in the function definition itself we have put two asterisk sign before the name of the parameter. Now while printing it, let's do the old my favorite statement. So my favorite language is and let's provide here the name of our key, which is language 2, because my favorite language is Python. Now let's go right ahead and run it, and it should be a yes. And since it works, since we passed the dictionary, we have to to access any element we have to pass the name of the key. So we have passed the second key language 2, and it has provided us with its value Python. Now if we want to do language 3 here, we should get our favorite language is C. Now you must notice that I am using this plus operator here, and I can use this plus operator in the print statement because these two, my favorite language is and this language 3, the value of this parameter is string. So the plus operator here is used to concatenate two string, but as this is a string, if this value corresponds to an integer, it will give us an error. So in that case you will use a comma if this is a integer, but in this case it isn't, so let's just use the plus. Now if you're wondering what if we call the function without any argument, well, I've talked about this before. You will get an error if your function definition requires an argument, but there's also a way to get around it using the default parameter value. For this, let's just create a new function. Let's do print name, and we set in its parentheses as argument, we set a default argument for the name variable as, let's say, Bob. So even if you don't provide it an argument, it will use this name equals to Bob argument as its default. Now let's do a print statement here and do im. Let's do a space here because we want space in between name. Now while calling the function, let's do a couple call statements here. In the first, let's give it a parameter Alice, and in the second, let's do Sean, and in the third, we will not provide an argument here, we just leave the parenthesis blank. So when the Python interpreter will work, when we first call the function, we provided an argument Alice, so the name argument here will use this value Alice while printing the statement, and in this it will use Sean as its argument, but in this it will use its default value which we have set earlier as Bob. So let's run and see it. So first it has printed Alice because we have provided this argument explicitly, same way as Sean, but in the third it uses its default value because we haven't provided it any argument explicitly. You can also pass a list as an argument to a function, and it will be treated as the same data type inside the function. Now list is another data type in Python which I've talked about earlier also. It can be used to define a set of different data types. For more information, you can just watch my previous videos. Now how can we do it? Just define a function here by the name print fruits. We will pass a list here by the name of fruits. I will create it in just a second. Now let's do a for loop here for x in fruits print x. Now let's create our list here, fruits. This is the syntax of how we define a list here. We will give some values like apple, like we've done earlier. The second value will be banana, and the third should be as we've done before. Let's do a different one here. Let's do cherry. Okay, so how will it work? We have to call the function print fruits. Now upon calling, when the Python interpreter will go to that function for execution, it will take fruits as arguments, and fruits here is a list we have provided it. So using this for loop for x in fruits, so the x element will be first on the first one, it will be at the 0 index, and it will behave as apple. So when we print x, apple will be printed on the Python console, then banana, and then cherry. So let's run it. Missing operation requirement fruits. Let's see what goes there. Everything is right. We have to pass the fruits here, and as you can see, we have printed the fruits here. Now the function definition cannot be empty, but if you for some reason have a function definition with no content, with no statements, with no value, with no line of codes, you put a pass statement to avoid getting an error. So if we just clear all of it from here, and if we define a function here, let's say print name, and you don't want to, for some reason you don't want to write anything in this function, and you just go ahead and you print your name here or anything. Let's say you print hello. It will show us an error because this function definition is empty. So in that case you will use a keyword pass. So this way the Python interpreter will not give us an error, and you can work on anything else. So that's it for this video.